Welcome everyone to Interviews You Can Use. Today I'm with Ranya Verson from PSI, better known as Performance Solutions Inc. Welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Nice to be here.
And I'm pleasure to be here because I have actually used your services and I have known you for a little while, and I wanted to kind of walk through some of the services and support items that you do in your education and training, which is the major forte of PSI.
Yes.
And you're out of Chicago, Illinois as well.
I am.
Oh, well. Well, I want to talk about some of the things that you specialize in your training and your education. Now, I saw you when you came in, you did a whole, what I would call a, almost like, if you'll excuse my phrase, a post-mortem effect on you saw my seminar, you repackaged it so that it would have its educational and training value, something I could not have done.
Yes.
And packaged it in a way that was really unique, and I was really kind of taken back, and this is your forte, you weren't even in my industry, and you were able to hear what I had to say, and if I didn't know you were in our industry, I would have thought you had to have been a long-term vet the way you packaged it, which tells me you have a good read on things like that, and you can observe, and you're going to do an assessment, and then you're going to be able to actually script it in such a way. Talk a little bit about how long has PSI been around? How long have you been doing this?
Yes, well, PSI has been in business since 1997, and we actually came to the insurance industry in the late 90s in what I call the deregulation era, when insurance services and financial services were combined, when the regulations were relaxed. And we did many, many big training programs, moving essentially producer employees to producer consultants and 1099s. There was a lot of education and transformation that went on at that time, and what I was able to observe is really what didn't work. And we looked at a new approach to help producers sell in really a more complex environment.
When I think about one of your key areas of training and education, you call it the morning effect, the Monday morning effect,
right.
I should say. I'm thinking, like, when I think of Monday morning, I think of the sports, kind of like Monday morning quarterback, just kind of reviewing what happened. Talk about the Monday morning quarterback and how you use that.
Right. Well, can I use you as an example, Steve?
All right, sure.
Sure. So when we worked together, you taught on a pretty complicated topic. It was VUL, Variable Universal Life.
Very complicated.
Yes. And you had some really amazing experience, some fantastic new knowledge, and then you were integrating this talk with actually company-sponsored tools. And you were speaking to a relatively beginner audience. So what I did is come in and manage what I call that Monday morning effect. And that's really a translation. So when the highly experienced person is talking to a fairly inexperienced person, they're really talking on two levels. And what's going to happen is the producer's going to go back to his office on Monday morning and go, okay, what do I do next? So what I did is step in and design the information, bundle and package it in a way where that producer could take all that great information and knowledge and actually do something with it Monday morning when he returned to his office. Right? Because after the workshop, we feel great. We're like, cool, that was great. There was so much that I learned. But oftentimes, I'm missing, what do I do Monday morning? What's the next step? And that's where I come in.
I thought your digest was really great because we're not talking about just sending a regurgitated view of the PowerPoint that I used.
Right.
We're talking about the way you digested it and then repackaged it.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my second thing I want to talk about, which is you have kind of a very, I would call it a gift, to bundle and package certain things that should stand alone, certain things that should be bundled. Talk a little bit about that process.
Well, as learning experts, we really understand the learning and communication process. We understand what are your key messages, and we also do a lot of assessment, ask key questions, because we want to understand what's your special sauce, what's your value add, or what is the key message that you're trying to get across. So we'll come in and ask key questions to understand that, and then redesign it, bundle and package it in a way that can be used, whether that's for training or education. Say you're, for example, talking to a CSR or a less experienced producer or to a customer. Oftentimes we forget we have to get out of our own heads of the information-centered world that we're in and the very important information and knowledge that's needed for us to do our jobs, and then that needs to be translated in a message that's simple, easy to understand, and to the point. And really in the other person's language. It's a translation.
I think that is a huge skill set when you consider taking complex information, what I did and what you're talking about now, and bringing it down to an easy format that everybody can understand and get on the first pass.
Yes.
That's a huge thing. Talk
Absolutely.
a little bit about, I love your little, I was reading this and you said this thing called prevent sales chaos.
Yes.
I mean, I think that should be an article.
Yes. It's a funny term, isn't it? And it's really true because I've seen this happen often. Especially in growing businesses, we work within certain work processes. So when work is getting transferred from one person to the next, oftentimes we lose things again in translation. So for example, a lead comes in or a prospect comes in and it comes from your CSR to another producer. Are the key messages included? Are the customer concerns involved? Is that information getting transferred in a way that the person can use it? So what I've done is look at some of these work processes and make sure those processes are tight and where they need to be so all the information is getting passed correctly. You've played the telephone game before, right, Steve? We all have when we were kids. And this is a similar idea with work processes, especially as businesses are growing and getting more complicated and involving more people, right? So the message starts out one way at the front of the line, and we all end up giggling at the end of the line because the message gets mangled.
Yeah, one of the things I really appreciate about your consulting services is sometimes as a corporation, we don't know what our key message is.
Yeah.
And you bring a whole new discovery process to the scene that can actually formulate for the first time our articulation, our expression, how it's served up to the public, how it's served internally.
Absolutely.
I think that's huge.
It is because we all come from our own head. So there's a lot of information out there and we talk in the way that we know. But to reach the customer or to reach the less experienced person, it's really a translation. How do we pull out those key messages and how do I clearly articulate my value add in a language the customer understands? We've studied language actually quite a bit, and we've found ways to actually draw out language like I call an open-handed card deck. I don't know if you know gin rummy, but my grandfather taught me that card game, and he did it with open-handed cards. So we had our cards out on the table, and that's how I learned. And that's what we begin to do with the training and education process. We take the information and we open it up so the less experienced person or the customer can see it in a way that they can understand, not in the way the very experienced person learns or communicates, because you're communicating with actually different patterns in your brain than the less experienced person or the customer that might hear you speak once a year.
So you're applying actually this science
Yes.
of cognitive understanding and interpretation
Yes.
to a whole new corporate level for our everyday life.
Absolutely. There's amazing interdisciplinary science out there right now that speaks about how the brain works, especially in the realm of emotional intelligence, which I'm also certified in, emotional intelligence assessment profiling, which is very helpful for connecting.
So you're using that with your master's degree to kind of tie all this together.
Yes, absolutely. And what emotional intelligence data and research shows us is how important it is to connect. I saw your program on Dr. Barb, and she was talking a lot about listening. And what we can help you do is really understand how to be active, better listeners in a way that connects, right? Connects with with your client or your customer.
Another area that you use, and this is kind of natural now that you've discovered what we're still supposed to be talking about, you've stopped the chaos, right? By education
Right.
and interpretation. But you talk about this phrase, Master of Persuasion.
Yes.
You like this idea.
Yeah.
Now that I have all this, how do I do this? What is Master of Persuasion? What is that stage of your practice?
Right. Well, it's a big claim, but we like to think that we help people get there. Because the people that I know, the salespeople that I know that are the most successful salespeople are those that really get motivation. They get where you're coming from. And there's differences by gender, right? But there's also individual differences. So the way you get there is really through tuning in on an empathy level and effectively listening. Those that effectively listening are going to be able to bring out the depth and the breadth of the objections, right? Because if those aren't all out on the table, the customer always has an escape valve. They're out the door because you haven't brought forward all the objections to the table.
Yeah, a lot of this is on your website, which is really spelled out quite nice. It's www.performsolutions.net.
That's right.
And that kind of lays out some of the things that we're talking about now in a kind of a nice format, easy to understand. If a corporation wants to engage with you and have I know that you have a free consulting call that you can just call in and discuss before you go into an assessment to train. But is there enough information out there that would explain some of the things we've talked about today?
Information on the website?
Yeah.
Absolutely. You can go to my website. You won't see a lot of producers or CSRs on there, but you'll see a broad base of industry as this work can be applied broadly to many, many industries. And you can also call me at 773-465-2088, as you said, for a free consultation or just to talk if you've seen this sales chaos or the Monday morning effect or just want to become a
I love the Monday
master.
morning
Yes. Well, it worked for you, didn't it?
It worked for me.
Yeah.
And I just want to say kind of an underscore, because it is a little bit of a personal testimony on my part. This bundling issue, this knowing when things should stand alone as an autonomous idea or how I should bundle it. And then how should I unpack it? How and what chronology should I use? And how does the brain understand it? What format has this chronology that I can dovetail into naturally and get more performance out of the people that I have underneath?
Absolutely. And that comes from really understanding psychology, motivation, learning, communication. All that expertise is sort of bundled up, and that's what we really do at Performance Solutions. We help people use knowledge, use information, use process in a way that's clean, clear, effective, and causes results.
You have a nice faculty on PSI, several people that are listed on the website. If you want to call them again, that number?
773-465-2088.
Or hop out on their website at www.performancesolutions.net. Well, thank you so much for being my guest on Interviews You Can Use. Ranya Verson, PSI.
Thank you, Steve.